Hello and welcome to the Rupeeting podcast. My name is Ayush and we have Chaitanya and Pratik on the panel today. Say hi, guys.
Hi guys.
Today is 420 among the uh, audience that indulges in leafy substances. Happy 420 to you. Uh, it is quite a phenomenal day. So let's wrap up the podcast quickly so everyone can celebrate 420.
Oh, so you already have plans.
Sure. Let's agree to disagree that I have planned. Cool.
Mm.
So today's company a little different, of course, because we don't do boring shit. Hopefully, uh, company that IPO'd 6 months ago, stock is up 75%, and it's a company that's involved in like an IT space, but is the only listed player that does exactly what it does, and was one of the first people to do exactly what it does, and continues to be a leader in that particular area. So the company's name is Zaggle. If you're an employee of Tata Steel, ITC, Hiranandani Corporation, Torrent Gas, Kotak, Axis, Visa, Yes Bank, IDBI, IDFC First, then you probably heard of this particular company because you are probably dealing with their service or product on a daily basis.
Or you're a fan of Jasprit Bumrah or Hardik Pandya, which
Oh
nowadays is
yeah.
very hard to find, but because they are the brand ambassador of the company also.
Oh no. Oh
Dude,
no.
that's a
What a
long
brand
list of
ambassador.
clients. That's a long
Yeah,
list
that
of
is a
clients.
long list. And that's just
Them
like
are
thing
reputed.
names that I thought of SE. They have 2,400 clients and 50
That's
million people
crazy.
using their product. Yeah, it's crazy.
Mm.
But I don't think we've actually gotten around to
Yeah.
what they do.
What
And
do
it's
they
a
do? Yeah,
little,
exactly.
yeah, yeah. So, okay. I think first we should talk about it in the sense that they solved a problem that no one thought of, that no one thought was a problem.
Mm.
So back in 2011, uh, their founder, Mr. Raj Narayanan, or Narayanam, if I'm not wrong, he identified the problem that in most big corporations, right? I think that
Mm.
still exists in most corporations now, but he identified it more than a decade ago. That employees who, let's say, didn't have a bank account had a tough time getting their salary credited to them in the most safe and tracked manner possible. Problem number one. Problem number
Mm.
two, if they go on a business trip or if they're taking a client out to lunch, they pay out of their own pocket and then they're reimbursed usually. And that reimbursement process
Mm.
took a long time. They have to collect actual physical receipts, ऐसा HR के मुंह पे देने का कि पैसा
यहाँ
दो.
सबमिट करो लो भाई
हाँ,
And
रिकॉर्ड
follow up
रखो
लेने का कि आया क्यों नहीं अभी तक आया क्यों नहीं अभी.
हाँ,
फिर वो
exactly.
रीइंबर्समेंट आते आते महीना महीना हो जाएगा.
Exactly. तो भीख मांगते
Mm.
मांगते it takes a long time. And so that's
Mm.
problem number two, reimbursement. And problem number three is incentivizing employees in a way that actually makes a difference. So instead of just
Mm.
giving them a voucher to ये ले 500 रुपए का shopper stop voucher or 200 रुपए का discount on your next meal or whatever. It wasn't enough. It wasn't uh,
Mm.
tracked either because you don't know what employee got what voucher for what uh, amazing job
Purpose.
Purpose.
that they did. So the three R's is what Raj calls it: remuneration, reimbursement, and rewards. These were the problems that
RRR.
corporate India, RRR. Oh, he's also South Indian, so that makes sense.
Mm.
He didn't just predict a corporate India problem. But yeah, it
Yeah.
was a huge problem back then, still a huge problem because corporate India is now 500 million people strong. Uh,
Mm.
at the least, like that's a lower end figure that I'm just quoting, and it's one that's growing at a very rapid pace. And this kind of issue of manually dealing with paying salaries, paying incentives, and reimbursing people is a huge issue. So what Zaggle did back in 2011 is they created a prepaid card and an app that goes with it.
Okay.
Revolutionary for the time. Now it sounds like every Tom, Dick, and Harry is doing it, but they were the first person to do it back then when no one knew what a prepaid card was in this context or what an app
Mm.
really was either, because it was still an
Mm.
infrequent service to provide. So
Mm.
yeah, everything was on that card. You get, if you don't have a bank account, you get your salary credit to that card. If you need a reimbursement, you upload your receipts onto the app, and then the money get credited into that prepaid card. And if you do a job well and you have like an appraisal coming up, then your incentives get credited onto that card as well in the form of a cash balance. And if you keep doing a job well, the app tracks you as your performance, gives you points, stuff like that. So basically, like a gamification of doing a corporate job, which is something that employees needed to stay alive in
Hmm.
the dead machine that corporate India is.
But was the
Yeah,
card as an acceptable form of payment method? Or, I mean,
Yeah. So I
can I
think
use
what
it as a
they
simple
term,
debit card?
yeah, I think
yeah,
so.
yeah. It
So they
operates
partnered
same as a
with, yeah,
debit
go
card.
ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, so it operates same as a debit card, and they've partnered with like all the reputed banks, which I used said like IndusInd Bank. Now, recently with Kotak, with Yes Bank, they have a
hmm.
credit card as well now, and they also have these networks
Oh,
with Visa, with RuPay. So yeah, it's widely accepted nowadays. And back then also, it was being
so,
accepted at all the banks. So they had made
hmm.
these types since the start. Yeah.
Correct.
So
And I
basically,
think they
if
termed it
I'm
as
an
something called a
employee,
network agnostic card. So
okay,
regardless of who they partner with and regardless of who uh, the bank was, they could still use it
Mm-hmm.
as a acceptable mode of payment.
hmm. So basically, earlier it was happening in a form of cash or maybe
Cash
the
or
form of
bank transfer.
bank or
Huh.
whatever, right?
Yeah.
But now it is all under one single umbrella. For the company, it became easier. And as an employee also, I could track only on Zaggle that how much I earned beside of my, if I am earning a reward, so how much I
Yeah.
earn beside of
Mm-hmm.
my regular salary and
Correct.
how can I spend it wisely, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so that
Exactly.
was okay, nice.
So
So that was
basically,
like the
matlab,
first thing. Huh? Go ahead.
go forward. Yeah. So
No, no, no.
basically, what happened was that for earlier, the companies had to keep a record in their Excel regarding all the payments they are making, or they had to do it manually, like Ayush said about the reimbursements and all. But now Zaggle
Mhm.
has come up with a software or a platform, or
Yeah.
Hmm.
where you can upload everything on that platform. You can track the employee performance on that. You can also track the on which date you have to pay to a particular vendor, and by
Hmm.
clicking on the vendor's name you can get the record like, oh, I paid so and so amount on this particular date. My next payment is on this date. So yeah, this they have made this so easy that they've helped in keeping the records for all the payments, and at the same time it's become so transparent at all the at the corporate level. The bosses know that my money is going to so and so vendor.
Yeah.
He is giving me good material, so I can reward him as well. You can also reward your channel partners, because ultimately they are only going to help you to increase your business going forward.
Mhm.
So yeah, Zaggle has been doing this by helping them keeping a clear record, and as Ayush said, gamification of
Okay, so you mentioned
uh,
vendors as well, right? So I think
Mhm.
they also come under as a freelance category, right? Because in a way, they are
Yeah,
not
yeah,
on a
yeah.
payroll of the company,
Yeah.
but they are working for a company in a manner.
Correct.
Okay, got it, got it.
Yeah. So I think the prepaid card and this whole system was set up to just solve the 3 hours ka problem initially. But what they
Mhm.
Hmm.
realized it again, so they identified a problem that didn't exist like in the heads of
Hmm.
the employees as a problem as such. Like it's like, oh, it's okay. I put
Hmm.
in that extra effort, but it's not like a
Like how we
massive
didn't know
problem.
that we want a home delivery of our food until Zomato came.
Exactly,
Same thing.
exactly. So it was
Hmm.
like a market that they opened with a product that no one thought of. And that was
Okay.
so brilliant in terms of its inception that it opened so many doors for the company to just use that core product into many fields. So one of them is what
Hmm.
Pratik mentioned. Apart from just remuneration, reimbursement, and rewards, the company was also tending to vendors and channel partners and tracking, okay, what order is going when, how much do I have to pay the vendor for what order that they
Hmm.
have shipped from our company,
Hmm.
incentivizing the vendor for early shipments, uh, them incentivizing us to repay them earlier. So it's like a two-way street there. So vendor management became a
Hmm.
new avenue that no one thought of before. And I think now in the recent past of, let's say, the last year, uh, within the IPO space, is they've identified a whole new issue. And I think that's really interesting. And I think that's something that you guys were discussing right before the podcast, torrent gas.
Oh
Yeah.
So
yeah, dude, that particular
yeah,
problem which they solved is too
like
good.
who would have thought, right? Like also,
Hmm.
while it is a serious problem, no
Hmm.
one thought of doing this particular unique solution. So what
Yeah,
torrent
What
and
cache
they
I
does
do?
mean they
as
didn't
yeah,
look at the problem. They looked at a
exactly,
problem in a very unique way. As in companies know
correct,
कि हाँ हमारे साथ ये हो रहा है, but then they
yeah,
looked at a problem कि भाई हाँ companies को cash flow का इससे problem हो सकता है.
yeah,
So then they brought a solution for that also using their
exactly,
existing product only. Yeah.
yeah. So do you want to tell us a little bit about what that problem was?
Okay, so basically, like all these torrent gas and other gas and oil players, they usually have a
Hmm.
large uh, fleet. They have a large fleet of trucks, cars, and all, which go all around the country for the gas and oil purposes. So, and at the time, and they go for they go for a long journey. So, like if the driver is gone, he's going out for a month and a half. So the company has
Yeah.
to pay for his
Everything
Expenses,
basically.
fuel expenses, food expenses, everything. So,
correct,
and they had to pay it upfront because the driver, because then they wouldn't
Yeah.
have any contact, like they wouldn't have any means to pay him. So they
correct,
used to pay him upfront all the amount for all these expenses. So what
Hmm.
correct,
Zaggle did is they tapped this market. They said, "Ki bhai,
Hmm.
instead of paying upfront, what you can do is you can give them our cards, the Zaggle prepaid
correct,
cards, and you can load it whenever necessary, as in an interval. Suppose अभी अगर मेरे को 10,000 देना है, starting में I'll give 10,000. वो खत्म होना आएगा या आएगा तो ड्राइवर नोटिफाई कर देगा. They can see on the Zaggle app कि हाँ भाई अब इसके
Hmm.
कार्ड में इतना बैलेंस बचा एंड ही नीड इट. द कंपनी कैन
Okay.
देन अगेन रीलोड द कार्ड. तो ऐसे उनका कैश फ्लो का प्रॉब्लम भी सॉल्व होता है एंड दे हैव बीन वेरी एफिशिएंट. उनको पास ट्रैक भी रहता है कि एम्प्लॉय स्पेंडिंग दिस मच
Hmm.
ऑन दिस पर्टिकुलर
Exactly.
हेड या एज
Hmm.
इन दिस
I think
पर्टिकुलर फील्ड.
tracking is the most important
हाँ,
problem they're
ट्रैकिंग
solving.
सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट हो जाता है. इसमें चोरी का
Yeah.
भी थोड़ा कम स्कोप रह जाता है.
But
chances are,
I have one question.
हम्म.
Are the drivers and all the operators, are they that digital savvy to use a card instead of a cash? Because what I've generally seen is they prefer the cash as the go-to method. And also where they stop. For example, if you're stopping on a highway, on a dhaba or somewhere, there are very
yeah,
few chances of they having digitalized. It's been a long time since
correct,
I've
correct.
been on a highway, but now if it's changed, then I don't know.
No, no, I
But
think
what's the
even
scene
there,
there?
so I'm sure since the prepaid card is also linked to an app, at some point the innovation will come in where it will be UPI enabled or some kind
UPI,
of digital
exactly.
payment enabled. So while the card is just like a token way of saying, ki, okay, this is the cash you have for your month-long trip, instead of giving them hard cash, there would be a
Also,
way to
can you
spectrum.
withdraw it into ATM?
Yeah, 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 yeah. That
Okay.
is also an
Okay.
option.
Then it makes sense. Okay, got it.
Yeah, but it's still
So
like
whenever there's
because
a
it's
new city, major cities there in the
they can
bay,
just
they can
withdraw there
always
as well.
withdraw.
Yeah,
Okay, got
yeah.
it.
So all of that is uh, tended to and taken care of. The main, as you said, the
Got
main solution or the main like plus point is the trackability.
it.
So
Trackability.
regardless of whether it's a
Hmm.
UPI thing or a withdrawal of cash or the usage of the prepaid card, it's all on the app and it's
Hmm.
transparent. The truck driver doesn't have access to edit the transaction in any way. Plus, it's good for them, right? Because while they don't have to take responsibility for the amount of cash that they have to just hang on to for the entire month and then proportion, the company just
Hmm.
incrementally adds cash on a weekly basis or a bi-weekly basis. So they're not exposed to using all of those funds at one point either. So it doesn't entice them to spend too much and doesn't,
Hmm.
as I think Pratik mentioned, chori ka bhi scene nahi hota hai. So
Hmm.
because all
But
of these
also,
highways are
I
changing.
mean, this top up process and all these things. But is this Zaggle is doing something to automate this process, or there has to be some manual person to top up the wallet of that particular driver or something like that? So, any clarity on that?
मतलब आई थिंक जो जैगल का ऐप है जो उनको डैशबोर्ड मिलता है तो कॉर्पोरेट्स
Uh-huh.
फ्रॉम दैट डैशबोर्ड इटसेल्फ दे कैन ट्रांसफर द अमाउंट. सपोज 10,000 मेरे को ट्रांसफर
Okay.
करना है तो वो कार्ड पे थ्रू द डैशबोर्ड दे कैन ट्रांसफर. दिस इज
Yeah, I
एज
mean,
फार
this
एज
is
आई
still
नो.
a manual process, or there's a limit set that
हाँ,
if
बट आई
the
थिंक
balance
देन
fall
गोइंग
below
फॉरवर्ड
500, then it automatically tops up.
तो आई थिंक देन गोइंग फॉरवर्ड अब जैसे जैसे इस चीज का एक्सेप्टेंस बढ़ेगा तो आई थिंक दे विल
Yeah,
स्टार्ट ऑटोमेटिंग आल्सो बिकॉज़ दे विल
Yeah.
इवेंचुअली हैव टू ऑटोमेट
because at
दिस
the
एज वेल.
scale, it doesn't make sense to make it manual. Because,
Yeah.
like, for example, they onboard TCS, which has hundreds of thousands of employees. So for them, though, it might be next to impossible to manually do all this stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
TCS is not
Exactly.
something that engage in road driving and stuff. Just an example.
So I
Reliance
think,
is that.
yeah, yeah. So companies that are that large in quantum need this sort of
Hmm.
product, and the automation will assist in that.
Hmm. Hmm. But
So
I think
yeah,
the most important one is that only. that trackability plus access to all the information at one single place,
Yeah.
so that analyzing and in the cost checking point of view from
Yeah.
in the accounts department, that
Correct.
also is very important that the Zaggle is doing.
So it makes accounting department का job easier, HR का job easier,
HR का
management का job easier, and employees का job easier.
yeah.
And out of all of this,
सबका
Zaggle
license
makes a shit
Yeah, but
ton
how
of money.
Zaggle makes money, that so we haven't come.
That's a very interesting point. So one of the products that it has, which is called what,
Ah,
Zaggle Propel or Zaggle Save and Zaggle
Yeah,
Zoyer.
there are three products.
Three,
Yeah, and
yeah.
the names are cool.
three
As in
products for
Zaggle
3 hours.
Save.
No,
Yeah, as in
unfortunately, it's
Zaggle
not
Save.
split in
Uh,
that manner. But what
Okay.
Zaggle Propel does is the whole rewards remuneration and redemption, sorry, reimbursement thing, where they earn a fee every time the employee cashes in a reward or makes a transaction on the card.
Okay.
So it's a revenue sharing model between them and the bank that they've co-branded the card with. And
Hmm.
they make about 57 to 60% of their revenue from this particular model
Okay.
of function,
Hmm.
Zaggle Propel. Zaggle Save, which is also a similar version of that, but I think it's used mainly by the BFSI sector. That makes up about another 38-40% of revenues.
Hmm.
And
that
whatever
is also same, I
balance,
think.
similar,
Using
yeah.
your cards,
Also,
number
that
of
might be the
Correct.
transactions, where you'll earn money.
remuneration wala product maybe.
Yeah, yeah. So a lot of payroll management happens on Zaggle Save.
Okay.
Yeah. And the third product, which is I think something that they released just last year, is
Hmm.
the vendor management and expense tracking bit
Zaggle
with
Zoyer.
Zaggle Zoyer. So that's about 3-4% of revenues as of now.
Dude, but
Not a
that's
big deal
Hmm.
yet.
crazy because so
Yeah,
while I was reading about this company a bit, so as you said, कि Zaggle jar अभी recently launched हुआ है and
yeah,
it's for the vendor management. So they introduced
yeah,
credit cards for the same. So
yeah,
and
Hmm.
अभी उसमें what happened? So I was going through this and Zaggle Zoyer through the cards which Zaggle has given already 2,000 crore rupees के transactions हो चुके हैं उस card से
yeah, yeah.
through the Zaggle card. So मतलब it shows कि हाँ increasing acceptance है इनके product का इनके cards का.
Correct.
Good initial traction they're getting it.
Yeah, yeah. So wait, that's an
Hmm.
interesting point you make there. Let's do the math on that. So if out of so they've made about 690 crores this year just in 3 quarters, out of which about
Mhm.
21 crores is coming in solely from Zaggle Zoyer. So that's about
Yeah.
10% revenue they're getting off of all transactions they make. So 2000 crores ka transaction pe
It's
10%
actually
is
1%.
sorry
2000.
1%. Correct.
अरे हाँ
Yeah.
1%.
So even on that 1%,
1% would be
they're
the
banking
like
on
equal work. That's a
they're
very big
making. I
commission.
mean, they're banking on volumes, and they're
Yeah.
really working on getting that volume up, which is, I think, partially
Hmm.
the reason why they IPO'd in the first place, because a lot of that
Hmm.
money, so about what almost 400 crores IPO issue, 300 crores out of that has been towards customer acquisition. So increasing those volumes is their next
Is-
name of the game.
Yeah.
Basically, their main aim is to get more people to spend through their
Yeah,
card so they
yeah.
can earn more on
Yeah.
the card
Exactly. So
transactions. Yeah.
because it's
And
just
they'll
that
have to
one two
spend on
percent,
yeah.
yeah. So why? So it's people will be thinking कि it's a 300 crores on customer acquisition that would put a drag on financials. But we did the math a little bit, and so historically, Zaggle in the past decade has only spent about 15% to 18% of yearly revenues on uh, customer incentives to retain customers and to entice
Hmm.
them to join onto the platform. Now, 300
Right.
crores worth of customer acquisition funds being split between FY25 and 26, which is the spending period that they've thought of a
Hmm.
base of, let's say, they're easily going to make about 800, 900 crores of revenue by then, which still comes up to about
Hmm.
15% yearly customer acquisition cost
Hmm.
if you split it between the 2 years. So while it
Right.
seems like a large amount on the face of it, and while people were
Hmm.
skeptical about, oh, this doesn't seem like a fruitful use of IPO funds,
Hmm.
it really is.
And it's a very sticky business also. Means once as a
Yeah,
company I get on board on the Zaggle, the
yeah,
switching cost would be tremendous for me. So there
correct,
is no
correct.
chance if any unless any big problem occurs, there's
Yeah,
no chance I'm gonna switch out of the Zaggle. But
correct.
that is
And they
Yeah, and
like
I
make
think
the
the
sure that,
customer ka churn rate was also at what around like 1%. Like
yeah,
on an
one and a
average
half,
basis,
two
the
percent.
customer churn rate was
hmm.
also at like around 1,
That's crazy.
1.5% for
So
the
no one
past
wants to
3 years.
leave.
Yeah.
No one wants to
Huh.
leave.
Hmm. So
In
this
fact, I
customer
think something
acquisition
you
cost they're
mentioned.
gonna have that for the longer
Yeah,
term.
exactly, exactly. So
Hmm.
that's a good use. I mean, we think it's a good use of the funds
पर
that they
मतलब
receive.
ऐसा then
And
I find it cool also कि यारे मेरे पास कार्ड है कैश की
Yeah,
जगह कैश एज अ रेम्यूनरेशन या
at the end
रिवॉर्ड की
of
जगह
it,
वो कार्ड मिल रहा है कि मैं पे कर
exactly.
रहा हूँ कार्ड
And
से, और
while
मैं
the
फ्लेक्स भी कर
Bas-
सकता
solution,
हूँ.
correct, while the solution is on one side, the way
Hmm.
they've branded the solution is also so nicely done. Like the
they
app is
made
actually
some
really cool to
boring thing
use.
into a very interesting one,
Very
basically.
interesting.
Hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah, nice.
So
Then I
yeah, so
think
I
So
mean,
the
उससे
just to have to
IPO,
spend. Yeah. Go
हाँ.
ahead,
huh.
Chaitanya.
So the IPO was total, matlab, fresh issue, right? It wasn't any OFS or something.
No, I don't think so. I think it was a. I think they did offload a
I think
bit.
it
Like
was
it was a
small amount. It
44%.
was small
Yeah,
amount. Yeah.
Yeah, as you say, I mean, out of 400, 300 was for customer acquisition, so that was fresh
yeah,
issue for sure. So anyway, a small
right.
amount, it's still okay. It's not a big
Yeah, yeah.
red flag as
It's
such.
not a big deal. But I think so. Actually, let me just check. Why should we leave it up to chance?
Hmm.
See, this is what
And
repeating does,
also,
guys. We do on the go research.
Just like them, they are making on the go innovative products. We are doing on the
Yeah,
go research.
yeah. So this particular issue of 400 crores that I was talking about was a complete OFS, but sorry, was a complete fresh issue.
complete fresh issue,
But they
yeah.
did offload a little bit. So I think it was like a 30% stake of some promoter, which was worth about 170, 180 crores, which was an OFS.
Oh,
Yeah. So technically, the total issue is close to 600 crores, but
oh,
the DRHP only talks about the 400 crores. The rest of
Then I
it,
think
so
I'm
that
sure.
was it
that's the money
pre-IPO
company
or
is
was
gonna
it?
get. That's why they were talking
I'm
about
not sure of the timeline. It was in and around the IPO time itself,
Oh, acha.
but the
Then it
400
can
crores ka
be.
split is
Uh,
what they've given, and the 170,
it.
180 crores ka, I mean, I'm assuming just based on logic, is they're going to spend it towards a reduction of debt because they've taken up 140 crores worth of debt in FY23, and now that number is down
Oh,
to 80 crores. So a combination of the fresh issue and the OFS and a little bit of cash balance has gone towards
hmm.
reducing the debt by half and will
That's a
continue
good
to
result.
probably do so. Yeah. And plus,
Hmm.
they're spending a lot on R&D. So while the fresh issue they spent about 10 crores on getting
hmm.
a couple of hundred Dell laptops, is what the DRHP says. So that's just to expand on the capacity to innovate. So
Hmm.
more hardware, more people they can employ, more brain goes into what kind of new industry they can tap into using the kind of core product they have.
Hmm.
So well utilized funds will continue to be
Hmm.
utilized for fruitful reasons and the entire industry. So while we were talking about this being a niche part of corporate India, the penetration of such a product of automating this entire process is a mere 10%.
Hmm.
Oh, तो
Yeah.
मतलब there's
And
still a
Zaggle
long way
owns
to
most
go.
of it. Yeah, so there's still a
Hmm.
long way to go. And with the corporate India, so the obviously the buzzword figure for their growth is 35%, 40% CAGR over the next 3-4 years. We can expect a similar growth rate for Zaggle as well, solely because of the fact that they're market leaders to an extent that they're untouchable by other players in terms of size. Like imagine in 4 years, they've gone from 68 crores of revenue in 2020 to 690 crores as of 9 months of FY24. The
That's
10x
crazy.
growth in
Not even a full
revenue,
year.
not even a full
Hmm.
year. So 10x
They
growth in
might end up
revenue,
like
8x
doing
growth
around
in
seven
profits.
fifty 800 crores revenue by this FY like FY24. अगर इस trajectory पे जा
Probably
रहे
not. Probably not because during Q4 it's a very like a not intensive period for incentivization because it's so close to the end of the year. But we could see.
But then
I
you
think
can
this is
also
a
look
side.
at the possibility ना कि अगर अभी
Yeah.
suppose मेरे पास एक balance बच गया है and
Huh.
year end आ रहा है financial year end
You will want to
तो मेरे
spend it.
को
You mean?
करना पड़ेगा मैं कर
Possible,
दूंगा
possible. I'm sure there's
हाँ I'm
correlations
going
there.
by that
Would be an
logic
Hmm.
interesting.
हाँ
It would be an interesting thing to research actually.
हाँ
See
Hmm.
what quarters are doing well for this company due to what reason. But yeah,
Yeah, but
so
that's the thing with this exciting fintech company
yeah,
as well. The
yeah,
scalability is always very rapid if the
it's
product
massive.
is
Yeah,
right and it has find
correct.
its product market fit. So
Absolutely.
yeah, and also plus the company's name start with Z. We all know the company Zoho, Zerodha,
Yeah,
Zomato,
yeah, yeah.
Zaggle.
They all seem to
So
have
that's
a
that.
good
good
luck
one
charm associated with
Good,
them. Yeah.
good. So let's
So
hope this one
hopefully
also.
this entity also does
Yeah,
well. Yeah, yeah.
mm,
Interesting stuff.
nice,
So that's all for this
cool.
week, folks. Tune in next week for yet another interesting topic that we cover on the podcast. And if you want to read the full length blogs that we do on these topics, which have a lot more detail, a lot more numbers, a lot more structure into what we free flowingly say in 30 minutes, you can read in 5 minutes. So head over to the description where we have the blog link attached, and like, share, subscribe. See you next week. Tata, bye bye. See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.